and welcome to Geeking Toyetic. I'm your host, Larry Roberts, and in this episode, we're going to take a look at one of the best playsets to come from the vintage Kenner Star Wars toy line. None other than the Imperial Attack Base that came from the Empire Strikes Back toy line that ran from 1980 through 1982. Now, before we even get into any of this, let's just address the elephant in the room. As has been mentioned by many other collectors and shows before, yes, it's really weird that Kenner decided to call this the Imperial Attack Base because, frankly, there was no Imperial Attack Base. This did not happen in the Empire Strikes Back movie. As we all know, at the Battle of Hoth, it was the rebels who had the ground assault and were trying to defend themselves from the onslaught of the all-terrain armored transports and the scout walkers. So yes, truly, this should have been called the Rebel Defense Base or something like that because this just isn't really screen accurate. But being honest with you, this never really took away from its play value for me when I was a kid. I didn't really care what it was called, and I didn't care what they said on the box or anything like that. I just used my imagination. Sometimes I used it as the rebels defending against the Empire. It just didn't really matter. It just left more room for me to use my imagination. And as to why they called it the Imperial Attack Base, I think there's all kinds of theories floating around out there. You know, back in the day, they had to have a lot of lead time to start developing the toys and naming them and stuff well before the movie was even finished. So I think that Kenner may not have known that there simply wasn't going to be an Imperial Attack Base. They probably saw little clips of the movie and maybe some still photography and stuff like that. They just didn't know that it was going to be that inaccurate. All they knew was that, hey, there's going to be battles on this ice planet and stuff, and so they came up with the Imperial Attack Base. But seriously though, whatever it was called, this playset was a lot of fun, and I still find it impressive even today. While it appears to be a simple enough set, it surprisingly had a lot of really cool play features built into it. When the set was completely put together like this, it had an impressive look to it, with the tall snow bridge off to the one side, as well as the rotating laser cannon that clicks when you turn it from left to right, and a gray command post center off to the other side. Additionally, as with other Star Wars playsets, there are random foot pegs placed throughout the playset so that figures can be posed and positioned accordingly. And speaking of this, I really want to draw attention to the detail of this playset. Not only did the designers do a great job in sculpting the hard plastic here to look like ice walls, but even if you look at the ground inside this playset, you'll see that there's a bunch of like footprints in the snow. And that's just a really cool little detail that shows that the Kenner designers really cared about trying to make this as accurate and detailed as possible with as little resources and everything at their disposal back at that time. But where this playset really kicks things up a notch is in its special action features. Now, the base is made from a fairly resilient and hard white plastic, and the semi-hidden levers and buttons that are placed throughout act as little features to be able to blow up certain parts of the playset. On one part, you can pull the lever and see the snow bridge completely collapse. Or there's other buttons hidden here into the snow that when pressed, you can make a figure fall over. And similarly, you can have the command post area be completely demolished by pressing another hidden button. All in all, this playset is loaded with great play features that makes it a lot of fun to play with, but it's also designed so nicely that it works out as just a really cool diorama piece too to put up on your shelf. Now, the Imperial Attack Base first came out around the end of 1980, early 1981, and first started appearing on the backs of packages around the end of 1980, like seen on the back of a 32-back card, as well as it starting to pop up in Christmas catalogs that year, as well as in other ads and such. Now, at the time of its release, this toy ended up costing about $12 at retail, which, when adjusted for inflation, is about equivalent of $50 today, making this a moderately high-priced playset, but I think given all the features that this thing has, I think it was worth the money. And while it wasn't as big as the Death Star or the Millennium Falcon or something like that, this thing really does give you plenty of bang for your buck. It was loaded with features and it was pretty sturdy. And speaking of its durability, because it was such a sturdy toy, you can actually still find these pretty commonly on the collector aftermarket these days. However, with a little bit of a catch. Now, as you can see, the Imperial Attack Base came with a fair amount of parts, some of them a little bit small. There ends up being a lot of pieces here that can easily get lost. Not to mention there's a bunch of stickers that came on a sticker sheet that were applied to the toy once you got it. And all of that, along with the instruction book, means that there's a lot of components to having a complete Imperial Attack Base. And finding one that is 100% complete can be a little bit of a challenge. Plus, when shopping for this playset, you have to consider that the white plastic also had a tendency to age and yellow over time, especially depending on how it was played with back in the day or what kind of environment it was kept in all these years. So that can affect how much it's worth or how much it's going to cost you as well. However, on that note, I want to say that there are some collectors and some channels out there that do have instructions on how to de-age this kind of white plastic. There's processes you can do by yourself at home that sometimes work really, really well. So if you do find yourself with one of these toys and you see that it's aged and yellowed and stuff like that, I suggest looking up one of those videos and see if you can't fix it yourself. Now, in terms of aftermarket prices and values of this playset, as with all other vintage Star Wars toys, it's going to depend on completeness and condition. Incomplete sets without the box can be found pretty easily and for pretty cheaply on the aftermarket. But the good news is that if you do want one that is more complete and has an open box, you can still find those for pretty reasonable prices. And if you do have an incomplete one and you want to build it up, there are a lot of dealers out there or people on eBay and such that are selling just the individual pieces for this playset. And in most cases, you can find the parts for reasonably affordable prices. But as always, if you're looking to get one that's complete and has the box, you're gonna pay more for it. And especially if you're looking for one that is like mint and comes in an unopened box or it's in a graded box or something like that, you're gonna pay a high premium for that. All in all, like I said, I think the Imperial Attack Base is one of the coolest toys that came from the vintage Star Wars line. Definitely one of the coolest toys they made for the Battle of Hoth. And I'm not knocking the other playsets that came out for it. I mean, the Turret and Probot playset is pretty cool, and the Hoth Ice Planet playset and the Rebel Command Center one have their charms as well, although they're pretty simplistic, but they're still cool and worth having. But none of them have as much play value and awesome features as the Imperial Attack Base does. So for me, if you were going to go for one play set from The Empire Strikes Back, this would be the one to get. Because overall, they just got this one so right, even if they did get the name so wrong. And so that does it for our look back on the Imperial Attack Base playset from Kenner's Empire Strikes Back line. Did you have this toy when you were younger? Did the name bother you too, or did you just not care? And was this a favorite of yours like it was of mine? Make sure you leave us a comment and let us know your thoughts on this. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Please remember to hit the subscribe button so you'll be notified when we have more content like this coming out. We always appreciate your likes and your subscribes, your comments, all that stuff. Feel free to come and join us on Facebook at the Geeking Squad group, where we talk about all of this kind of stuff, as well as on our TikTok and our Instagram. We're posting content on there all the time as well, so we highly encourage you to check all of that out. Thanks once again for checking us out here on YouTube, and we will be back very soon with more cool retro vintage toy stuff. But in the meantime, it's time to get out of here. So thanks again, and may the Force be with you.